The darkness closed in around Emily as she stumbled blindly through the forest. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her breath came in raged gasps. She had been running for what felt like hours, her feet pounding against the soft earth as she desperately tried to escape the horrors that pursued her. She didn't know how it had happened. One moment she had been out for a hike, enjoying the peace and solitude of the woods. The next, she had stumbled upon a grisly scene, the mutilated remains of a hiker left to rot, and then she had heard the footsteps behind her, the heavy breathing of her pursuer. She had run as fast as she could, not daring to look back, but she knew he was there. She could feel his presence, the malevolent energy that radiated from him like a poison. She tripped on a root and fell to the ground, sobbing in terror. This was it, she thought. This was the end. She would never see her loved ones again, never experience the joys of life. She was going to die here, alone and terrified, in this God-forsaken place. But as she was laying there, something stirred within her. A spark of defiance, a refusal to go down without a fight. She struggled to her feet and continued running, ignoring the pain in her legs and the heaviness in her chest. She had no idea where she was going, but it didn't matter. As long as she kept moving, as long as she stayed one step ahead from her pursuer, she had a chance. She emerged from the woods into a clearing and saw a faint light in the distance. It was a glimmer of hope, a promise of safety and salvation. She redoubled her efforts, pushing herself to the limit as she raced towards the light. As she drew closer, she realized it was a cabin, a small, dilapidated structure nestled in the clearing. She could see the faint glow of a lamp through the window, and she knew with a sudden surge of hope that someone was inside. She reached the door and pounded on it with all her might, sobbing in relief as she heard the sounds of footsteps approaching. The door swung open, and a kind-faced man appeared, his eyes widening in shock as he took in her disheveled appearance. "Please," she gasped, "help me. There's someone after me." The man didn't hesitate. He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her inside, slamming the door shut behind them. She collapsed onto the floor, trembling with fear and exhaustion. "It's okay," the man said soothingly as he was patting her shoulder. "You are safe now. My name is Frank, and I'll protect you." Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Frank gave her a comforting smile. "Don't worry about it. Just rest now. We'll figure out what to do in the morning." She nodded and closed her eyes, allowing herself to sink into the deep sleep. When she woke up the next morning, she felt much better. The terror of the previous night seemed like a distant memory, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Frank was already up, tending to a small fire in the fireplace. He looked up as she emerged from the bedroom and gave her a warm smile. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you," she replied, feeling a sense of gratitude towards the man who had saved her. "What's the plan today?" Frank sighed and shook his head. "We need to get you to safety, that's for sure. But it's not going to be easy. This man probably is still out there, and he won't give up until he gets what he wants. Emily shuddered at the thought of the man who had chased her through the woods. Who is he? Why is he doing this? She asked. Frank hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his words. His name is Michael, and people that live nearby claim he's a serial killer. He's been terrorizing those woods for years, preying on hikers and campers. No one knows why he does it. Some say it's for the thrill, others say he's insane. All we know is that he is very good at what he does, and he's almost impossible to catch. Then what can we do? She muffled with a subtle sense of despair. Frank's expression became determined. We can't just sit here and wait for him to come after us. We have to take the fight to him. But we need to be careful. He's a cunning and dangerous adversary. We'll have to come up with a plan and stick to it. Emily nodded, feeling a sense of determination rise within her. She may have been terrified and on the run the previous night, but she wasn't going to cower in fear any longer. She was going to help Frank bring this killer to justice, no matter the cost. As the sun began to set, they set out into the woods, following the trail of clues Frank gathered. They moved cautiously, staying alert for any sign of Michael. As they made their way deeper into the forest, the tension mounted. They both knew that they were getting closer to him, and that the confrontation was imminent. They heard a sound of footsteps behind them and spun around, weapons ready. But it was only a group of hikers who fled in terror at the sight of their armed and determined expressions. They continued on, the fear and adrenaline coursing through their veins. And then they saw him, a shadowy figure in the distance. Without hesitation, Frank aimed and shot at him. He was dead. Despite the terrible situation, Emily let out a sigh of relief at the sight of her persecutor collapsing on the ground. Frank told Emily to wait for him there and watch the body from afar, as he would go to bring his van and take both her and the body to the police. But Emily, out of curiosity, wanted to have a closer look at the body. As she approached closer, the sensation of terror returned back at her. On the ground, she found a police officer, heavily wounded. She ran to him, and in a state of shock, she tried to explain her situation and what it seemed to be a terrible misunderstanding that led to this point. The police officer explained that he was investigating the area due to the hiker found dead the day before. He said that they were looking for a suspect that allegedly was living nearby. "Please stay with me," Emily said in tears to the officer as he was starting to drift away. "Frank will be here soon, and will take you to the hospital." The officer's eyes widened at the moment he heard the name. He tried his best to come to his senses, and with the remaining strength he had left, he was able to tell her, "Run. Go now to my car and call for backup. This Frank you're talking about is the..." Another shot, now in the head, silenced the police officer. Emily turned her head in shock and saw Frank standing a few meters away, looking in contempt. She immediately started to run again, but in vain. He caught her by her legs and managed to hit her head with a baseball bat. As she was laying on the ground, semi-conscious, she saw Frank pointing at her head with his gun. "I told you I'm very good at what I do. I won't give up until I get what I want."